500 and growing.
Podcast.
Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you. Working on your craft, getting strong, cause I see you. Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. I'd like to welcome the audience to the 500 and Growing podcast. My name is Jesus Azteca 500 Sanchez, and our guest is Tyson New Life Sanchez. Is a doctor of physical therapy, a run coach, and a world music collector DJ. He founded his Oakland-based mobile physical therapy clinic in 2018. He's licensed in physical therapy in both California and Illinois. He also provides ergonomic assessment, personal training, and mobility training to anyone anywhere else in the world that has internet access. He is also a DJ whose world travels inspired the creation of the FEX Party Foreign Exchange, founded in 2009, a party that was dedicated to exposing his hometown of Chicago to different cultural flavors in the nightlife scene and solidifying it as an international destination for music. With hip-hop and a house DJ background and mixed aesthetics, New Life honors and upholds this legacy in a unique fashion. Over the years, he's channeled the inspiration from his travels into the sound that is morphed into a fusion that you'd have to experience to understand. New Life continues to DJ and produce music that brings people closer to the cultures of the world and closer together as people. He has brought his style of mixing music to music lovers during the pandemic via a monthly world music mix called World Over that can be heard on SoundCloud, which can be accessed in the description. Everybody, please welcome Tyson New Life Sanchez. All right.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, how you doing, Tyson?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No problem, brother.
Tea is really good, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah. We try over here at 500 and Growing podcast.
I like it.
I invited you to the podcast so that you'd be able to share some of your thoughts, some of your history. You've been DJing for a really long time. I've been at your FEX parties here at Chicago at the Subterranean and just like vibing out to the music and was always like Shazamming you, on the down low. Don't tell nobody though.
On the unders.
Yeah, because I was always astonished by the music and I didn't know what it was. So I was just like, when that technology came out, I was just like, yo, I'm going to this party and making sure I know everything that just got played. But yeah, so this podcast is really to inspire people, especially people that are in a rut, in some type of rut, or have just come out of a rut, to be able to like create or be able to fulfill their truest potential, right? Their fullest potential.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're going to go through is what it was like to grow up, the fork in the road moments that you had, and then what you're doing right now.
What was it like growing up? Growing up was, someone asked me this recently. I had a great childhood. I had a really great childhood, and it's all relative, right? So we didn't have money, a single parent household for the most part. Dad wasn't around. I grew up in Logan Square in Chicago, and there were kids. I'm from an era where we went outside and played, and I was really active, climbing trees, garages, just outside playing sports. I mean, year round, I was just out there doing it, like really being active, from like, breaking my neck when I was about 11 years old to like knee injuries, like early on. But yeah, we didn't have much. We really didn't have much at all. We had my mom, who was like the sergeant in the house, and keeping us in line. Everybody knew she was like the strictest mother in the neighborhood, pretty much. She's also like the neighborhood barber. So I didn't have like a real haircut till I was like 13. So she cut my hair, my brother's hair. She cut everybody's hair. But yeah, growing up in Logan Square was dope. And I didn't until like more recently. I mean, we get to the part where I moved to California about 6-7 years ago now, but there's also like, it was a gang infested neighborhood, and the majority of these people that I'm talking to you about that I ran around in the streets with are no longer here, and so, as a kid seeing that around you, you think, okay, this is normal. This is how it is for everybody. And then you become an adult and you get through life and you start to leave, Logan Square and the city, and you see that there's a different reality, and certain things you came up around, certain things you saw and experienced wasn't exactly wasn't normal, really.
What was it like not growing up with a father? Like,
it's interesting because I reflect back on that quite a bit, like even more recently. So my dad and my mom had me when they were 19. You know what I'm saying? So they were kids. They didn't get along. My parents are both sort of difficult people in their own way, as many of us can be. But they just didn't get along. And my dad would come around just very sparingly. And I was very fortunate in that, both my parents, they have lots of siblings. So I had lots of aunts and uncles that sort of filled in the gaps where my parents really couldn't, So, but they weren't there my dad more specifically, wasn't there in certain moments where I needed him, to protect me from certain things, again, that I did see, that I did experience, that I was exposed to. So that was, it's interesting because I think I dealt with that early on. So I know, speaking to my partner about this actually, and even my therapist, there's like this suspicion that, have I really dealt with this? Have I processed that? And I think I did, because obviously there were painful moments as a kid when you're like at the window and like, oh, Papi's coming, and Papi don't show up. And it's like, damn, and you remember, well, I remember now, like bawling and shit and just being disappointed because you want to be with your pops, right? You're like, you're a young man and you're like wired to your father. You know what I mean? Like biologically wired to your father. And so there were painful moments as a kid, but I really think through the fortune of having a lot of really loving family members and friends families, around me. I think they really helped fill the gaps. So again, I definitely had a good childhood.
Growing up, what were some of the things that you saw that you wanted to change?
It wasn't a conscious thought, but something drove me to like do well in school, and something drove me to like want to do things with my life that took me out of poverty. Because I didn't even know I was poor at a young age, because everyone around me, didn't have things, and we didn't have. It's interesting. Like none of my friends had fathers either, that were around, and I didn't realize that at the time. I was just like, oh yeah, mom, let's go ask your mom. And then again, as you age, you start saying like, well, where's his father? So anyway, the things I wanted to change, and you'll get this, I'll repeat this, I think, through a lot of this interview, about how fortunate I was, and that, a lot of decisions were made for themselves. So I wanted to change. There was this underlying current within me to like do well in school, to, get a good job, and then to help people, you know what I'm saying? And that's what I wanted to change. There was no one around that I felt was like helping me or guiding me or mentoring me in the way that I really needed. No one for an extended period of time. Like my mom was busy just trying to keep the household together and providing for us. And, she didn't come from like a background, a scholarly background, or she didn't come from entrepreneurial family or anything like that. So I wanted to, do the best I could to piece all that together. And because I don't think I had that mentorship, it took me until like more recently in life to like, hey, this is how I become an entrepreneur, and this is how I continue my education. Like it's all about continuing to learn.
How did you find that support? How did you? I mean, so if you didn't have the father figure, right? Mm-hmm. Like what did you lean on to support you during that time, mm-hmm. when you needed support, or nothing supported you and you just
No, I mean, that's where, like, in particular, my uncle, my godfather, my father's youngest brother, my dear Ricardo, he's also my godfather. He just like, he's the closest thing. I have a few uncles, him being probably the one that was around me the most, leading by example, really. And so, he never came out and like, told me what to do, but he showed me what to do. He showed me, like, he had his first kid at 15 and like married his wife. They're still together, and like so when you look at like what I guess images or what thoughts or what molding or I'm sorry, I'm not even thinking of the right word. If you think about what a father was, he's definitely a great father and an even like equally amazing man. So I think I leaned into him a lot for guidance. And again, I think I just wanted to not be in the situation I was in, but I don't think I even realized that at the time. That's the funny thing. I didn't have the wherewithal or the understanding to know that, I wasn't in a good place. I just know that while I had a good childhood, there were a lot of moments where I was just unhappy. You know what I mean? I remember being frustrated a lot because I'm the oldest of my mom's 3 kids. And so at like 8, 9 years old, I'm going to the laundromat to wash everybody's clothes. I'm like, we didn't have money to dry the clothes. I'd take the wet clothes, bring them home and hang them up, and I would like carry the wagon and walk a mile to Jewel and get like grocery. And, I was like, I was very mature back then. And, and so it was, those things, I think that unhappiness was like, yo, this is kind of the sure way to get out of this. And why don't you go and do right in school? And so, yeah.
And then what was your relationship like with your mom?
Ooh, me and my mom did not get along especially well. And I, not to like give her excuses. I love my mom. I've got a great relationship with my mom now, but we butt heads a lot. She had to be more of an authoritative figure. And I know if she could do it all over again, she would have, but it's hard being a parent. It's hard to let your kid be who they are naturally and also discipline them in a way that they need. And that's always like the battle and the unique exchange between a parent and a child. And, so it wasn't good. I remember saying some pretty awful things and thinking some awful things about my mom, not understanding, like, she's just doing what she's got to do, and you got to sit there and take it, and you got to do your chores, and you got to go do this laundry, and you got to, and I know you'd rather be out playing. I get it, but you got to I credit her with a lot for, making me the mostly disciplined person that I am.
I can relate to that. My mom didn't want me to end up like my dad. And so she was really adamant about like making sure that I was disciplined, making sure that I would fulfill everything that I set out to do, because my dad had big dreams but never really accomplished much. And so she definitely raised me in the opposite way that my grandmother raised my father. But in that was tough love. And that tough love, we got along until I became a teenager and started really diving into hip hop. And then there was a point where it was just like, you can't be getting home at 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
And
hip hop ruined a lot of relationships between kids and their parents.
Man, that was like a point of like contention. And I was just like, she was like, yo, you can't stay here if you're going to stay out until 3:00. I was like, well, I'm performing, man. Like,
right.
I got to do this. Like, I love what I'm doing. How did you start DJing?
So in Logan Square at the time, everybody, not everybody, a lot of people were DJing. A lot of people got their hands on turntables. And I actually didn't have my first set of vinyl turntables until I was like in my mid 20s. I would have a handful of records and I would go to friends' houses with my records, or I just used their records and I got my chop. I was like 13. So I was like in 7th, 8th grade. going to my guy Mark's house, DJ Bots, who was like one of the dopest DJs of the time. This was back in like the Literary Explosion days, back in Wicker Park. I don't know if you know, but like you're rubbing elbows with like maybe Common's down there, maybe Kanye West is down there, and a bunch of other like early legends, Gravity and like. So anyway, there was a dope scene back then, and I started like playing out just a little bit in my later teens, but mostly just like carrying Mark's records. And I had an uncle who was married into the family, DJ Magic Juan, and I think I got most of my mix style from him and really learned the most about, the Chicago style of blending. And he was a straight up just disco house head, and he was extra dope. But I just had a lot of friends when I was a kid who were around me who were DJing. And it was just part of what we did. There was a guy real quick, this guy by the name of Miles, and he would come out in the summer and set up like a sound system essentially with all like reggae records. And he would just, that was like my first exposure to reggae and to like sound, like a little sound system culture. It wasn't like a big deal, but he would just like, oh, look at this guy out here with his turntable, like playing. Damn, that's kind of dope. And so that was like some of the first exposure I had to music that was not being played on the radio. And then, of course, all the house music I was spoken. When I learned DJing, it was all there were only house records you can really get and some disco.
Yeah,
there was nothing. There wasn't a lot of hip hop records that I got my hands on.
What years were these?
So this was late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
So yeah, you could find hip hop records, but at the places where I would go and check out records, or where my friends were going to check out records, whatever, it was just mostly house music.
Oh, for sure, because Chicago's the foundation of house, so you would figure that would be prevalent.
Yeah, and if I had more resources, I'm sure I could have tracked down some hip hop. But remember, this is all pre-internet and pre like me having a job and all that shit. So yeah.
Did you learn like watching, or did you learn like actually like somebody teach you step by step how to do things?
Just doing, man. I didn't have a mentor or anyone, except like that's not totally true. My uncle Juan, that was mainly like me watching him. Like, what? Oh, damn! Look how he rides the fader during this blend. He doesn't touch the record at all. Mm-hmm. But it was mostly no one sat me down and said, this is how you do it. Along the way, you pick up pointers, but I think it's mostly watching and doing. You got to get the hand practice in. You got to train your ear. You have to get your hands to do things without you having to think about them. Your ear tells you, okay, the bass is a little high when these two records are together. Let me cut the bass on this without thinking, because you're really thinking about, maybe what's the next song you want to play, or how do I want to come out of this song. So there's a lot of moving parts. So
sure, man.
Yeah, that just takes,
I've been trying to mix on this thing, and so it's just like there are moving parts. So like you'll put an effect on and you forgot you put the effect on, and then you start playing the next record and you wonder why it's not sounding like nothing's coming out, and you're just like, oh, or you put the fader on the wrong way. Yeah. And you're just like, oh man. So then you have to like restart, and it's just like it's training your mind to like automatically do these things. It's really really interesting.
And the more you practice, and I'm tapping into my sort of my PT hat a little bit. The more you practice, the more you find like, okay, my hands are actually doing the things and I'm not thinking about it. So it's like wired into your spinal cord almost. You're like, again, your mind is like looking at the audience, thinking about the music that's playing and what you're going to play. And the hands just they kind of do what they need to do. And that only comes from repetition. It's like that doing it 10,000 times, theory. So there's no real shortcut, I don't think.
What was it like the first time that you went up on the tables and you like did it officially in front of people, where it wasn't just like you were just like you were the person that they were asking to come, and it was just like it was a big deal for you?
I mean, it's constant it's nerves, you're nervous more so than I still get nervous in some instances, but it's less so about like my capabilities and what I'm going to do. It's more nerves around like the other moving parts that go into doing a gig and promotion and dealing with booking folks and all that sort of thing. It's more like the the math and the things that go on behind the scenes, and it's more like I have to remind myself, like, this is all about having a good time, so don't get too wrapped up in the things that can go wrong. Just have fun, because if you're not having fun doing this, then probably just stay in your bedroom, because you're not gonna have more fun than that, to be totally honest. If you're too worried about all the things that can go wrong and the things that DJs deal with. So, but yeah, it was nerve wracking first time I went up.
What are those things that you would like advise a DJ to look out for?
The more you hone your craft, the less you find yourself having to chase people down, to chase gigs down, to make sure that people are doing kind of what they agreed to do and all that sort of thing. I think the doper DJ you are, the more people flock to you to book you, the more you have people drawn to what you're doing. And so you try not to chase all this down. You just create, be dope, and you'll attract the right moves from people, I guess, digging into your music or digging your music and what you're doing, what you're sharing, to like the people who want to book you, to like the sound people, even like, oh, I know him. He works well. He comes with it. He knows what he's doing. You make other people's job easier, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, everyone likes that, right? Everyone likes to have their job made a little bit easier. No one wants to book you if you're a pain in the ass. You can be really dope. You can be really dope. Oh, this guy's an amazing DJ. Crowd loves him, but he's late. He's weird with the whole money thing and that conversation. He's got a rider. He wants like a bottle of Mo with it. It's just, it can get ridiculous. And so I try not to take it all, too seriously. And I know I have a good idea of where I sit. I'm not a world famous DJ. I love what I do, but I know I'm no, Qbert. I'm no, and to be honest, I never tried to be. I'm just trying to like share what I do and have like bring forth. That's my creative outlet. It's not a hobby. It's not a job either. It's like somewhere in the middle. It's just something I do.
And so world over, and then FEX, like, so you got inspired by traveling. How did that happen?
So FEX, there's a backstory. And so again, like my first, I think, exposure to what, for lack of a better term, we'll use called, world music was Miles playing, reggae 45s when I was, I don't know, 10, 11 years old or something, real early. And then, I've always been drawn to polyrhythms. And so you don't find that in a lot of American pop music, and that's pretty much what you listen to. And then house music is just like four on the floor. So if I heard something like a Todd Terry record or something that just had some more polyrhythmic drum patterns, I was drawn to it. And so, started DJing early, and I was always like trying to get my hands on things that sounded different. Started traveling a bit. Really went on like first road trips, like 19, 20 years old. Before that, didn't travel, but long road trips, and then started leaving the country. But fast forward to like, after learning on house and then really considering myself more of a hip hop DJ, just really getting away from the monotony of what house music can be. Like I went to Sonotech actually. Mm-hmm. And this was like 2010, maybe, something like that. And Buraca Som Sistema was playing, this group out of Lisbon. Maybe you're familiar. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they put on a dope show. They had this female MC. It was Branco, who you might know of. He was like the mastermind on production. And it was just a really dynamic show. And I was like, yo, I'm gonna do a party of just all this music that's made elsewhere or really influenced by music that's from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And that's about the time I met David Lozano. I met him through like a mutual friend, Julio Villegas, and he's like, yo, my friend needs some help, man. David was doing some parties at Funky Buddha Lounge.
Yeah, the kitchen sink.
Yeah, I was doing that, and I got to know David then. I was playing some gigs there, and I was like, yo, I got a little bit of social capital on the north side. You got a little bit of social capital on the south side. This is what I want to do. I want to play a party where, like, at the time early on, I was like, I don't want anything that's made in the States or anything that sounds like it's made in the United States played at this party. I want to just do something different, because there's a lot of dope hip hop parties, a lot of dope house parties, R&B. You can hear all that, but you really can't go anywhere to listen to this. And I got a lot of this. At that time I was like, I'd already traveled to Brazil. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Puerto Rico. I started really getting that travel bug, and like that's where my finances. I saved, my money for was like to travel, and I would go to where I liked the music, and come back with CDs of music, and or just like, touch the ground of where this music was made. Like, meant a lot.
That has to be like super powerful, right? Because like you're actually immersed in the music. Like, it's not like you're not in your house listening to something. It's like going to a different country and like just being immersed in the language.
Yeah, and not only the language, but it's like all five senses. You're smelling. There's a particular smell that's occurring while you're listening to a song. You're seeing visions. If you're in the favelas in Brazil, and you have a visual of like a 12-year-old holding like an elephant rifle, and it makes you a little nervous. But then there's this funk carioca track playing, and then you've got like someone handing you some caipirinha. Anyway, there's a lot of moving parts. So it's beyond like, hearing it there and hearing the language. It's like the experience that boom, has it sink in with me. I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but those are some of the things that traveling did for me. Is like, okay, I know I'm not Brazilian, but I like what they're listening to, and I feel like maybe it's something in my DNA, maybe it's something that my ancestors, there's some connection. I don't know, not to get like, super weird with it all, but I've considered all these things. Like, it's just part of what draws me to music, and that's what solidified it.
Yeah, and I want to let the audience know about the FEX parties. Like, they were incredible, and it must have been man. Like interesting to fill a niche that wasn't filled before, right? Like, you were playing things that like people would just like snap into a trance on, and they would just, the next beat would come, you wouldn't know what it was, but it was so dope that you would just keep dancing to it. And so
thanks.
Yeah, those nights were really dope. I was always, in the corner just like dancing by myself, like vibing out to the music, and then again shazamming my ass off.
Yeah, So no, the thing is, with that night, what I'm most proud of is the fact that the result of it is like, there's a legacy. Like, I did it for 10 years. Well, not I, but we did it for 10 years, and I can go into like more about the dynamics of the group. And then at the 10-year mark, I looked around. I was like, yo, we don't even live in Chicago anymore. But anyway, the music was dope, and not only the people I met, but how it just brought people together. So I've had like multiple. There are babies out there because of two people who've met at the parties. Some FEX babies out there in the world, which is dope. But it brought together like the B-boys. It brought together the house heads. It brought together the everybody, people who are more to like dance hall and modern music. They're like, yo, this is like, it became its own with scene, like involving all the other scenes. So it was a good like melding pot of all of that.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was amazing. It was really a great time. And I look at those years fondly. I think looking back at FEX, it was probably only 20, there was a catalyst, like 25 to, maybe 50% of that overall experience. It was like David Lozano, like, being the lovable dude he is, and people just liking to be around him. It was MC Zulu being like really good on the mic, and just like an amazing personality, and his social capital that he brought, and his interest in love. It was Itzinala, Dave Marquez, who like brought also like the social awareness and the artistic talent and the musical talent. He was kind of like the jack of all trades of the crew. It took all of that and then the one purpose. We all had like one purpose, and we all aligned there, and we had slightly different perspectives and approaches, and it was mostly harmonious, but a lot of times we didn't agree about everything. But yeah, all of that, we were all scattered. We're all living in different parts of the country. There's no one on the ground. We didn't see the people that we saw anymore. We weren't in contact with them. Things had changed with the venue at Sub T just a bit with like, the agreement we had and all that. Things change,
Is there anything that you would tell your younger self now, being a little bit wiser, being a little bit more mature, or a lot more mature, right? Being a grown adult, like what would you tell yourself when you were younger to help you grow, that you kind of had to learn on the hard way? And then how did you learn it the hard way?
Yeah. So I guess I'd have to be succinct with this because so many things come to mind as you bring that up. But, going back to let's just say like the formative years, right? Like before 8 years old, right? And I would say like rebel a little bit more. I would have probably broken the rules a little bit more. I think, my mom she ran such a tight ship that I think it resulted in me sort of not wanting to color outside the lines enough. I wish I could go back and be like, yo, color outside the lines a little bit more. It's okay. She yells at you. It's okay. This is not about you. This is about some of the issues that your mom has. You know what I mean? Don't take it personally. She's going to yell at you, but you'll be all right. I remember being a young person and having like just out there thoughts and wanting to do things that were just different from the way I wanted to comb my hair to the way I wanted to dress. And she gave me the freedom with a lot of those things. So I'm using that term like color outside the lines figuratively, more like with how I did things maybe around the house or the way I communicated or, So that's one thing. And then when I went to high school, I went to Lane. Like all my friends ended up going to Clemente, and I could have at the time of my life at Clemente, but I got accepted into Lane and went to like this quote unquote good high school and had a rough time. But anyway, during my high school years, I lived with my dad for like 2 or 3 months. That didn't go well, long story short. And I lived with his parents, my grandparents. And so they had already raised 7, 8 kids. So it's like they had it down. I had no curfew. I had like all the freedom and all the unconditional love and all the like the space and the safety of like wanting to do what I wanted. My grandfather would like, I'm 14 years old. And he's like, here, you want to take the car to go like to your neighborhood to get a haircut or whatever?
Nice.
Or you want to like, you want a beer? He was like, he saw I had a good head on my shoulders, I think, and like gave me like all sort. He like the rope went.
They trusted you.
They trusted me. The rope went from being like, 6 to 12 inches with my mom to being like, 6 to 12 miles. I come home when I want. But what I would have told that person back then is like, I didn't help out. I was like too busy like diving into like all this freedom I had. I didn't help out enough around the house. Grandfather was always tinkering with things, whether he was fixing one of his cars or fixing around the house. And I don't think I offered to help him once, and so I would have told myself like, be grateful, go do some things.
And those things that you're talking about, like how have you addressed them as an adult?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm still addressing them. So life as I see it, or at least my life, has been like this continued learning process, right? Where like, I think I know more now than I did 2-3 years ago when it comes to, how to move in life. And that's just, if you I approach my life as like, I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to be better.
You kind of regret that you didn't help around the house and you didn't help your grandfather, especially when he was tinkering things, which is something that I can relate to because there was a certain point in my life where I was like all about emceeing, all about performing, getting home at 3:00 in the morning. Mom she was an Avon lady. She would invite me she invited me to Louisiana, to New Orleans, because they were going to give like the top Avon ladies an award. And she was like, you want to go with me? And I was like, no, I got to do this and I got to do that.
Right.
And one thing that I told elders in like after she passed away, and like really decompressing all of this, like anger, but then also shame, but then also like regret that I have with the relationship that I had with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, you were a teenager, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like you thought like a teenager. Like you're approaching this from an adult mind frame.
Right.
And an adult mind frame would actually consider other people, but you were living your life, and it's okay for you to live your life. And you don't have to feel bad for not going with her to Louisiana or to New Orleans, you know? So the question was like, how do you deal with it now as an adult? Like, how have you come to terms with it?
Mm-hmm. You got to forgive yourself. You have to let things go. And that if I have a superpower, I think it's that, you know, I'm not a vengeful person with anybody, including myself. I know I've made a shit ton of mistakes, and I could continue to make mistakes in life. And, you know, it hurts for a while. And then you have to forgive yourself. Like I gotta go look back at like 15, 16-year-old Tyson and be like, yeah, you didn't do this, and now your grandfather's dead. And I'm like, you know, like, damn, I wish I could have. I can't. And then the realist in me is like, there's nothing you can do about that now. But it's, you know, it's okay. Like you'll do better with other things that are hard to do. You'll try and be more mindful with other things that approach you in life, and you took the lesson from that. You know what I mean? You look back and like, okay, I made the mistake. You know, are you going to do something productive with it? Or are you going to beat yourself up over it? And like my grandfather wanted me to have fun in life. He wanted me to move on and be successful. He, you know, him and my grandmother told me, my grandmother's still alive. His wife, she's 92 years old. And she's like, I always loved you as a son. She told me this recently. And, you know, they wanted goodness, you know, for me in my life. So that's I think how I've dealt with it. I've looked like, what would they want? How would they have handled this? And they wouldn't want me to sort of wallow in like the guilt of some of the things I didn't do right when I was 15. You know what I mean?
And that's really important, to forgive yourself. I think that's when you get to serenity or a state close to serenity, right? Like accepting yourself for who you are and the mistakes that you've made. I think that's a key part to like moving on from what could be trauma, right? Like that's really important. A lot of people beat themselves up for things that happen, and I think that's really dope. What's something that you think that people misunderstand about you?
Almost everything. No, it's I mean, people, you know, one of the, that's a good question. I think they misunderstand a lot about me and, you know, where I fit. Because the first thing we do, not we, but a lot of people do when they meet you is like, yo, you know, oh, you're Tyson, you know, what do you do? You know, that's within the first minute when you meet someone new, like maybe what do you do for work or what do you do for fun? And people begin to like get their boxes out. Like, let me put him in this box. Okay, he's in that box. Let me put him in another box. And I'm like, you know, I DJ. So, and then let's just stay on that path. And like, I think they misunderstand what I'm doing as a DJ sometimes. Like, what is he doing? He's like, sometimes he plays some familiar music. Sometimes he's playing some things from like some country, speaking some language. And sometimes he's like playing some real boring stuff. And sometimes he's playing like this crazy, like spacey stuff. So I don't think everybody gets me musically. I mean, I could go the route of, you know, just come into a set and playing, you know, 25 songs that everybody knows and probably be much more successful as a DJ than I am now. If you're talking about success being like maybe earning a living, I think I've got the skill, the technical skill to like, to do that. And anyone can kind of grab 25 songs that people know. The majority of people who go to listen to a DJ are not what I would call not necessarily music lovers. They just want to have a good time. And so people want to sing along and have a good time. So I think people look at me as a DJ and they're like, you've been doing this for so long and here you're still playing things that people don't want to necessarily listen to and dance. And some people feel like the way you've described feeling, they're like, they appreciate, you know, they want to find and discover new music. And that's sort of where I find the most joy from what I'm doing. Thankfully, I've got a day job, right? I got something that pays the bills. It's not DJing, because Lord probably knows that if I were trying to make a living and have the things I have off of just DJing, I wouldn't be able to do it with the music that I currently play. I would have to, probably play something. And that's not that I'm above it. I have nothing against popular music. Zero. I don't even think it's necessarily, especially basic. I mean, you can break things down, even pop music in its current state, and be like, okay, I can kind of understand that. And that's really interesting. And I see why things have moved the way that they have. So it's not like I'm above it. It's just, it doesn't fill my soul the way that playing the music I do does. And that's what I try and let be sort of my guiding light. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a position to do that in a lot of different ways.
And I know that you, with your physical therapy, which is your day job, it started from you being hurt. Is that correct? Like you got hurt, and you had to like recover through physical therapy, and you figured out like, oh wow, like you were studying to become a mechanical engineer, or you were studying something, and then you decided to like switch your profession over to becoming a doctor of physical therapy.
Right.
What was that process like? And then how did your music kind of interact with that decision that you were making?
So this is interesting. I've given this like a lot of thought, and it's making me think of other things that sort of, in my adult life, I think this is how I've tied a lot of these threads together. So, as a kid running around, jumping around like a monkey and just really banging my body up at an early age, breaking my neck doing gymnastics. Like
you broke your neck?
I literally
wow.
broke my neck doing gymnastics, and just whatever, ill-advised things on a springboard and landing wrong. And so anyway, I recovered, I'm good. But, and then, I played played varsity baseball at Lane Tech, and we were in a game my senior year against Mather High School, and got into a collision at the plate and tore my ACL. And I was like, at that point, I was like, yeah, I think I might have a run at like scouts coming out to see me a little bit, and like from smaller schools. And I thought like, who knows, man, let's see what happens. Let's do this. But anyway, the tear in my ACL changed that, because I didn't get to play like the majority of my senior year and not get noticed or anything like that. And in retrospect, that wasn't all that great. But anyway, tore my ACL. At Lane, you take a course of studies. It was a technical high school in Chicago. And so you have to take like drafting, and you have to take like sheet metal shop and wood, shop and electric shop. And so my mind was just, it was great. It was like, I hated Lane at first because it was so damn hard, but it really helped me. And I found this fascination with like mechanics and like, damn, this is how it works. And I was just very like into all that and drafting. And I was like winning like drafting competitions in high school. And like, I was like, okay, I'm good at this and I understand it. And I'm pretty good at math and all this sort of thing. So I applied into like mechanical engineering programs, and tore my ACL, had to go to therapy, physical therapy after surgery, like two screws in my leg, and I didn't know what to expect. And then I met my therapist, Sally Fansler. I remember her name still. And she was like really chill. She was like, here, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And so I was like, oh, I love this. And so after I was done with my rehab with her, I ended up working for her as like just like tech, someone who did laundry and someone who like wiped the tables down and someone who like put the charts
from the ground
away.
up, huh?
Yeah, dude. I just started like, I was like, yo, are you hiring? And she was like, yeah, sure. And so she hired me to help around. And at that point, I was an undergrad, like kinesiology at UIC, just, learning this, study of movement. And then I got into PT school. Like I didn't expect to. It's really competitive, but I applied and I got into PT school, and I was like, this is dope. That was by far the hardest thing I've ever done, is getting through physical therapy school, because at the time, I graduated holding my son, who at the time was like 7 months old. I held him as I walked down the graduation aisle.
Wow, that must have been powerful.
It was cool. Yeah. It was like not even thought out or scripted. I was just like, I wanted him to be there with me. And but that's to say that like I was really into what I was doing. I was proud of my accomplishment. I worked really hard. Shout out to my son's mother, Veronica. She really held me down during that time. And it was just a really dynamic time. A lot of things were going down at that time with both of our lives. My son coming into the world and starting a new career. Good times, man. Really built a lot of character in me those years, for sure.
How did it interact with your music? Like, how
Yeah.
were you? Because I imagine going to school was really hard. Being a parent was really hard.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're still spinning in some, like you're still playing music in some way. Like how did all that come together?
Yeah. Well, it kind of didn't. Like I didn't at that point. Now we're talking. I'm like in my early 20s. I was playing music at home and DJing at home. I wasn't playing out. And really, to be totally honest, I was just like totally involved in school. When I was in physical therapy school, there was no real going out. There was no DJing out. There was not much of a social life at all. The priorities had to shift. And so that's how that went. And then, but as soon as I like got out of PT school and had all this time in my hands, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I mean, you can in some ways equate it. Now, I hope I'm not being disrespectful, and I've never been locked up, but someone comes out of like the penitentiary, from what I understand, it's like, doesn't really know how to get around in the real world. It's like,
socially, like what?
You're reconditioned. Is like, oh damn, I forgot what it's like to have like free time. And so anyway, I dove into music, and I still do that at rough times, dive into music. That's my happy place. And so I started devoting more time to my music. And, really, I got really hungry after that, because I could go in those years, like I can go work 7, 8, 9 hours in the clinic, go out at night, if I needed to like politic or gig and do all that sort of thing, and then get up and go work just the same. And then, in between there, like, sneak in poppy time and like, hang out with my son. And then, when my son's mother and I split up, it was a little different. It was like, I had him for days at a time. We had joint custody. So it was like, but it went well. We lived a few blocks from one another. After the dust settled, she and I were still cool. We were friends before. We're friends now. You know what I mean? We've always we still co-parent, even though my son's like doesn't really need much parenting in many ways, insofar as support and all that. He's but yeah, the music took a pause essentially during that time. By and large, I mean, you never stop. It doesn't stop. You sneak it in, but you're not out playing music. I wasn't. Yeah.
Any times where you were like, you were in the fork in the road, and you needed to make decisions that like led you to be the adult that you are today, like something that somebody in the audience could like relate to, that you would want to share, and also acknowledging the vulnerability of sharing something in a growing process, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the decision, yes, there have been many, and I think, a couple, I'll just touch on a couple of them. And the decision to go to like, you can throw out a bunch of cliches like, you got to take the road less traveled. And if you're scared to do something, it's probably the right thing to do, right? We've read those things, and we might have been through them or not. Maybe we haven't had the courage to like do the things we know we have to do, the courage to put in the work, to like decide like, okay, I'm going to jump into school, or I'm going to jump into this business endeavor. And I know it can all go wrong. I know I could be like in a really bad place if this all goes wrong, and that's scary. So let's talk about kind of, just taking that road less traveled, and like going to a good school. Like, okay, I decided to go to a quote unquote good school in high school, and I didn't really want to. Like, a lot of my close friends were going to other high schools. I wanted to have fun at that age, but I did it. And you can talk about like, times when like again, I'm going back to school right now, but applying into physical therapy school and not thinking you're going to get in, and you get in and you like break your back, like putting in all the work to study, because it's super hard to get through some of these programs, and you do it. But, if we're using that last example, sometimes, that Rick Rubin podcast that I think I talked to you about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a really great podcast, by the way.
And he like really just, I think, provided me with a language to speak to this. And it's sometimes decisions are made for you. Sometimes you just have to get out of the way and let the chips fall as they will. And so, and that's been the theme for my life, whether it's like, as things panned out, like I ended up living with my grandparents during high school, one of the greatest blessings. Me becoming a physical therapist, the profession found me essentially through all my injuries and then needing physical therapy. It found me. I didn't make the decision to but I had the courage to proceed with it, but it found me, and I got out of the way of like self-doubt and just kind of tapped into like the wave that was coming my way and decided to like jump on, like do it, just do it. And sometimes it's a conscious decision for sure. And sometimes it's like, I don't know, you pick up on the signs that are just, or the movement again of like this wave, like things are going in this direction. Oh, you got a place where you can stay. Up, you apply for this grant and you got it. Up, you've got accepted in the physical therapy school. Up, you're with a woman right now who's like willing to support you while you can't work because you're studying. What, like all these things start to like fall. So I've been mostly fortunate through all of this. So I'm not going to sit here and say like, I made the tough decision to do X, Y, Z. Same thing with like my physical therapy business. Like I waited way too long to go out on my own. I should have done this a long time ago. So I think try to get out of your head if your head is telling you like you can't do this, or, if there's some sort of story you have in your head about some fear or that you're incapable or you don't deserve this. Like you deserve all of it. You deserve everything that the kids who grew up with, and wherever they are with all the resources that they have, with nice cars and two parents who come from a more, a different background than you. Like you deserve what they have too. Don't get caught in the weeds. Don't get caught in the mud. Don't, there's a lot of construct that we come up through and with in our youth. And as you grow and you become an adult, you start to say, well, that's not true. And that's not true. And that's not true. And you start to step into your greatness. You know what I mean? And you start to, just reparent yourself, I guess that's, And so I guess the biggest thing for me, as it helped for me, was to just get out of the way of myself and some of the self-doubt and lack of confidence. And
how did that happen? Like when did you have that self-doubt, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah. So I continue to have self-doubt. So it's not like I'm the most confident person right now. It's not like I have it all figured out. I promise you, I know less now about things than I do, but I think I have the experience. And I have kind of I have some more confidence. I have more trust in myself. But in the things that I spoke about, like what did I do? I just kind of like some inner voice, and it's not like someone spoke to me. It's not like that kind of inner voice, but I don't know if I was guided by someone or something or led by example, but it just, I don't have a great example other than I just got out of the way and let what was happening happen. And it wasn't even like, oh, I see it. This was all like through self-reflection.
Is there anything like that process of like moving to Cali? What was that like? Like that had to have been scary to be like, all right, Chicago, I'm out. And I know that there's people would see it on the surface level and be like, you're going to better weather and like, but the fact that Cali is way more expensive than Chicago, right? You can potentially start a business here, right? Like what was the the decision making when you were just like, I am not going to invest in Chicago. I'm going to move somewhere else, be an outsider there, and invest in that. That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. And it did. Just to backtrack a little bit, just before my son was born, I was wanting to leave Chicago just because at that point I had the travel bug, and I was like, in my early 20s, I was like, yeah, I'm going to finish school and, we're going to go live somewhere else. And we didn't know, Miami, New York. I wanted to see, I knew that there was more. I love Chicago. I still love Chicago. I come back. People sometimes think I still live here because I come back so much. I just love to touch down and be here. But I never left because we had we had our son, and I wanted to, we needed the fam. We were young too, right? I was 21, 22 when I had my son. And so I needed family support. I needed that social network. And so we stayed, didn't go anywhere. But once he graduated high school, I talked to him about it, and I decided like, okay, now's the time. I had a partner, again, things falling into my, I had a partner who was from California at the time. She moved to Chicago to be with me and to like work on what we had. And I was like, cool, we'll go back to California. I love the Bay Area. I'd been visiting the Bay Area, DJing, and I had some friends out there. So I was like, the Bay Area seems like a real cool place to be. Let's do it. It's close to where she was from, and where she is from. And I was like, let's do it. And yeah, I left behind like, years of friendships in some ways. By left behind, it's not like I disconnected from people because I still kept in touch with them, and I come back and I still see them. But still, there's a bit of steam that gets lost when you're out of sight and out of mind. Years of like clients that I had worked with, patients, all the relationships that I'd built, so a ton of social capital kind of left behind and be the new kid, as you put it. And I think I undervalued that. I was like, wow, I thought I was going to come into California and hit the ground running, and no, it didn't happen like that. Like the gigs were harder to come by. Nobody really knew who I was. Getting patients, it all took work. Like now, 6-7 years later, I'm like, I feel I'm up to speed in the professional world. DJing, Bay Area is smaller than Chicago, so there's just not as many venues and people there to establish. I'm happy to just play not all the, but like the guest gigs that I get, and I spin mostly now, like either here in Chicago or down in LA. I've got like more social capital in those places. But anyway, how did that happen and how it all came together? Again, I kind of got out of the way, and I let it happen. And some of it was just me being straight up dumb, really, and like not giving the decision kind of the respect it deserved, if you will. Mm-hmm. And maybe a little arrogance and thinking like, there's, I'm not going to skip a beat. There was definitely a beat and multiple beats that were skipped during that process.
So during that beat that you skipped, right?
Yeah.
Like, what was it like? How did it impact your self-esteem, right? Because mm-hmm. like all of a sudden you have this social capital. Everybody knows you when you walk around, like your DJ New Life, your FEX, like people jock you, I imagine, right? Like, and not in a bad way, but they're just like, hey man, like when's the next? Or like there was always a way to connect to you, right? Because people knew who you were.
Right.
What was it like to go somewhere new where nobody knew you?
It's like going to high school, It's like going to college. It's like, going to a party where you don't know anybody. It's like, it's kind of scary. It's like, oh shit, what am I doing here? What did I do? So it's like, you do things like that and you see what you're made of. And some of us develop like mantras, right? And so, I get into like the meta voice in my head, and like just I have mantras, or I have things that I tell myself to encourage myself, whether it's like a reminder like, hey man, you belong here just as much as everyone else belongs here, and you deserve these patients, and you deserve to start your own company just like everyone else does. Like, do it. It's not only for you, it's for people who might look to you as some sort of mentor. It's for your children to see, like, this is what my pops did. This is what, and just the younger, more impressionable people, you're gonna,
Like pay it forward.
Right. Where I'm at, where you're at, where, our peers are at, we're in a position where we're going to leave an impression on somebody somewhere. And so when you talk about like your purpose, your intention for what you're doing, it's bigger than you. And so sometimes you tap into that, like, I'm going to do this for X, for whoever, right? And I do that with all sorts of things. And like workout, I'm going to kick my butt with a workout. I know this is going to hurt. I'm going to do it for my aunt who's sick right now. I'm going to pull through for her. So you set a motivation, you tap into that motivation when it's like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Or I don't think I belong here. And you're like, no, you tap into these things to find the courage to redirect yourself, because again, those voices in your head, the stories that we have of ourselves, where we're not like at our best.
Yeah, the little kid.
They're the kid, and for some of us, it is the little kid, right? It's the whatever trauma. We've all been through trauma. We've all have our own. It's all relative, but we all have our trauma, and for some of us, yeah, we've got issues is that from childhood, And, I've been through therapy, like on a more consistent basis, never like hardcore therapy, like weekly, like some people go weekly. I've been through like short stints of that. Now I kind of do it just ad hoc, if I need somebody to help me process things or to give me some perspective. But I also find that's not the only way. Like I find value in like talking to trusted friends, trusted adults. My partner is really good right now. Shout out to Sivan. She's really good at like, communication. That's the number one thing with many relationships, especially like an intimate relationship. And so we communicate especially well, and I feel really safe with like talking to her about things. So anyway, my point is that it's just tapping in when you can, and then I think getting out of the way in other instances and just let what seems to be happening happen. Mm-hmm. Don't talk yourself out of certain things around you that are just moving you in this certain direction that, if you have the foresight, appear to be positive. Like this appears to be like I don't regret moving to California. I feel that's where I belong right now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I might be there forever. I might not. I don't know. I don't really like. I don't necessarily I don't necessarily make plans. I mean, I have direction. I like to say that I think that I like this to happen. I think I'd like to like maybe, live in Chicago 1 or 2 months of the year, live in California 5 or 6, 7 months of the year, maybe be in New York or somewhere else for a month or two of the year. I'm very like mentally like transient or transitional. I'm like into the idea of like trying it all out and being open to what opportunities present themselves to me, and having the courage and knowing like, okay, I've been through this hard part of my life. I've been through that hard part of my life. Like things always work out. Not always, but they usually work out if you trust yourself, if you trust the tools that you have, whether it's like, you have a certain skill set, a certain knowledge, a certain understanding, you're willing to ask questions. And that's big. If a lot of times we just don't ask the right questions. We just go with the unknown, and that can, that's such a broad statement, but seeking help, like, asking someone about things that you don't understand, maybe about them or about a certain subject or about a certain endeavor that you have, like find a mentor, put the time and put the work in. And first and foremost, just like, have a genuine love or at least an interest in what you're doing, and be willing to let go of it. Because sometimes you start these endeavors and it's like, I don't think this is working. Like you don't need to run things into the ground. You can sort of reflect back and be like, this is working. I try to change this. I try to change that. I don't know, like get away from like the founderism that you might have. And
no, that's true. The founderism is very important to let go of, because it'll make you, it would have probably made you hold on to that foreign exchange.
Right. Yeah. And I was losing esteem, and with good reason. It wasn't like, oh, Tyson, you're no longer a good DJ. You're no longer like able to make the crowd move. You're no longer bringing it. I could have gone there, but I was like, hell no, I'm a better DJ now than I've ever been. And I can continue, in my opinion, to get get better insofar as like developing the ear and like, curating music and curating an experience. But, the fact of the matter is that, yeah, there are a lot of things that go into throwing a party, of which very little has to do with the music that you're playing.
Word. Any last words of wisdom? Whatever you want to tell them.
I mean, trying to wrap up kind of a lot of what I did. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Because this was like
for sure.
There was like a processing session for me. I didn't plan any of this out. I just came here and rambled and riffed. But I think, find your strength, whatever that looks like to you. Get the stories out of your head that create doubt and fear. And find the way in which to do that. It's not, there's not a formula. It's all very complicated, but you don't have to make it more complicated by listening to negative stories in your head and the self-doubt and the fear. And sometimes have the courage to step away. Sometimes have the courage to dive in when it feels right. Listen to your gut. Very important. And look out for me. DJ New Life, at DJ New Life. I hope to be coming back to Chicago regularly and gigging. You can check out my website, thedjnewlife.com, thedjnewlife.com. And physical therapy, we didn't tap into that a lot, but yeah, I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and that is mobileptclinic.com, mobileptclinic, Mobile PT Clinic. And you get your telehealth on, or you can get me in person when I'm here in Chicago or in the Bay Area. So yeah, thanks.
All right, brother.
Yeah, man.
Signing off. Here we go.
Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you working on your craft.
500 and growing.
Visit 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.
Cause I see you ready to set it off and on. Cause I see you correcting all that is wrong. Cause I see you dedicated to your craft. Read and study the math. Making goals and taking a stand. Original, so you trailblaze a path. In tune with your inner master plan. Footworking through the obstacles of life. Sticking and moving. What's not right? Keeping it peace, but ready to fight. Protecting and keeping your light bright. In your eye and your mind. Illuminating the blind. Seeing the signs. So brothers and sisters, get on your grind. Get on your grind. Get up off those knees. This is the time we find ourselves. Improve our health and never settle. Take it into a higher level. Sound mind growth is mental. Purposeful movements, never accidental. Dedicated to the underdog.
Thank you for listening to the 500 and Growing podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. We have incredible guests lined up that will be sharing how they came to be extraordinary at whatever they do. And stay tuned. Follow at 500 and Growing podcast on Instagram for updates, and also visit 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.